Good morning, everyone. I think I heard a few good mornings back. Good morning, good morning, good morning.
Good morning.
I'm going to start with something bold, and I really mean it. You're at the right session because there's lots of sessions. This session is making history for reasons that will become clear in a minute. And I really am excited to be here because it's important, because it's making history, and because it's the right thing for the American Society of Criminology to do. I want to welcome you all to this session that we've called Prison Education Matters. And the matters, of course, is meant as a double entendre, as in topics and relevance. I'm Val Jennis. I'm the president of the American Society of Criminology, and I really am pleased to be here. That's something I will say a lot at these meetings. I'm going to say it 3 times for this session. I'm really pleased to be here because what we're going to talk about today does matter. It matters immensely, and we'll all engage in that discussion about why it matters. I want to start with something personal. More than 6 years ago, I looked it up, it was February 2nd, 2018 to be exact, I wrote to the Dean of Undergraduate Education at the University of California, Irvine, a university I've spent 27 years trying to do good work at. And this is what I wrote to Michael Dinnan, our long-serving dean. My colleague, Professor Karamet Ryder, and I have been working on a proposal to develop an innovative undergraduate program to enable the University of California, Irvine and the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation to collaborate to create and implement a program to grant bachelor's degrees to people who are incarcerated. And of course, the academics see attached. That's the big document. Similar efforts have succeeded at private liberal arts colleges as well as the Cal State University system. But for some reason, UC is behind the curve on this one. We, Karamet and I and others, now have LIFTED, which stands for Leveraging Inspired Futures Through Educational Degrees, as part of the portfolio of teaching at the University of California, Irvine. And it is the first in-prison BA degree completion program in the entire University of California. LIFTED graduated its first cohort of students in June of this year, and I mention that because it's a real source of pride for my campus. And when I say my campus, I mean the many colleagues, the many supporters, of course our chancellor, our administrators. It took a lot to build this program and to serve people in the state of California, including people who are incarcerated, their families, and their communities. Alas, we were late to a larger trend, and that is not a source of pride. To prepare for this important panel, I reached out and I asked Professor Ryder, my colleague and friend to my right, who's also the founding director, and I would say the heart and soul of LIFTED at UC Irvine. I asked Karamet a couple questions, and I didn't tell her I was going to read them out loud in an introduction. You know, you want the raw answer.
I know you.
So she's like, guard this, she'll cite it in public. First I said to Karamet, because I was busy and didn't have time to look it up, and I knew Karamet would know it like that, I said, what college campus in California went first regarding educating people in prison? And she said, the Prison University Project at San Quentin. That's what it was called when it started. The longest standing college program in San Quentin. I'm not sure which community college started first, but UCI LIFTED's partner, SWC, was one of the first to prioritize transferable degree pathways. Cal State LA established the first BA program, and UCI second. I mention that because I want to applaud those programs that went first in the Cal State system and elsewhere. I have a deep appreciation for their leadership, their commitment, their work, and to establish a model of how we in the Golden State can proceed. Second, I asked Karamet, how many students are involved now? How many students are being educated in California prisons? Karamet wrote back, the best estimates, though data is always fraught in prisons and universities, as you know, Val, are that more than 10,000 students have earned AA degrees and a few hundred are enrolled in four-year programs now across 2 UCs and I think 6 CSU BA programs. My colleague Emma Hughes at Cal State chimed in on this email exchange. You know, academics, they like to go back and forth, with a slight correction. 5 CSUs are offering BA programs in a total of 8 prisons, with a 9th prison coming on board. I think Sac State's BA might have started before UCI's, and Fresno State started in spring of 2021. Went on to cite CSU Dominguez Hills runs a master's program. Pitzer's been running a BA program for quite a while. I mention this back and forth because it's a great thing when we lose count of how many. It's really wonderful when 2 knowledgeable people who have devoted decades of their lives write emails on the count. It sure beats the opposite when it's easy to count because it's not enough and it's too few. I want to begin this presidential session by applauding everybody who's had some contribution to make to creating educational opportunities and capitalizing on those opportunities and supporting the people who have benefited from those opportunities. These educational journeys do not happen in a vacuum. They happen because it really does take a village. Family member, friends, administrators, the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, state workers. It's just a heavy, heavy lift, not to be confused with lifted, all right? I like to say in this session, this really is California gold when we talk about the Golden State. As some of you might know, this Friday, I'm really honored to award the ASC President's Award for Contributions to Justice to Project Rebound.
Yeah.
Hi, Jason. Yeah, really, really wonderful. For amazing work they've done for over half of a century. That's infrastructure building, that's impact on lives, that's making it real and routine, and serving people who are formerly incarcerated, and I would go further, serving the state of California and the diverse communities that are housed in this state. It is amazing work, and it has had an incredible impact, and it's going to be really fun on Friday to recognize that work with some nice visuals and lots of Project Rebound directors. I mentioned this because in California, there's lots to recognize and think about when contemplating the relationship between education, incarceration, and community building in truly inclusive ways. That intersection, that nexus, is why I wanted a presidential panel on education and prison education mattering. And that is why I want to thank Karamet Ryder and Emma Hughes in particular for immediately saying, happy to organize it, you don't need to worry about anything, and then they just run with it. Those are the teammates you want. I want to thank them for all the time and energy they've put into imagining this, to organizing it. They were here early first, of course, making sure the technology's working. Most importantly, I want to thank them publicly for being a teacher of mine. I've learned a lot by talking with them, learning from them to understand this space. And I think anybody that knows me knows my teachers are my favorite people. So just a thank you to Emma and Karamet. And a round of applause, I think, for the work. I opened by saying we're going to make history here, and you'll hear more about why in a minute. And I'm going to close with this. Nelson Mandela's a hero of mine. As many of you know, he served 27 years in a South African prison, and upon release went on to become the first democratically elected president of his country. Here's what he said about education. Education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. From my point of view, these are telling words from a man convicted of crimes that included sabotage, committed while he spearheaded a struggle against racial segregation in South Africa, a man who won the Nobel Peace Prize in 1993 and then became a symbol of freedom and equality, a man who has been widely praised by former opponents, including the very people that incarcerated him. There's lots of reasons he's a hero of mine, and I suspect a hero of many people. Nelson Mandela made history and had a lot to say about education as a key part of that. Today in this panel, we're going to make history and we're going to have a lot to say about education and that nexus. Now I want to simply thank all of you for attending and turn it over to Karamet to start talking about prison education mattering. Karamet?
Thank you. Thank you so much, Val, for that lovely introduction and for the years of your immense legitimacy you have lent to the movement to bring higher ed to prison education in California. It wouldn't have happened without you either, and it's really exciting to have this panel and this moment to celebrate it with some really amazing people who have been involved in this work since the very beginning, and also with some special guests. This is part of the historic moment. I hope they're going to pop up on the screen shortly, who are actually joining us from within prison, from a higher education program that's currently running in the state. So I have to say, as someone who's been doing this work for a few decades now, I never imagined I'd be in a room at a major national academic convention zooming people in from inside prison who were getting their college degrees. And so this is really an amazing moment to have them be part of the conversation with us, because this is what this work is about, right? Is bringing these folks into the room with us to talk to us and hear their perspectives. So I'm so glad that you are here today, Henry and Martin. But what we're going to do now is just briefly start by introducing ourselves. And I have amazing things to say about each of these panelists, but I'm going to let them introduce themselves. As Val said, I'm Karamet Ryder. I'm a professor in criminology and law at UC Irvine, and I direct Lifted, the first University of California BA program for incarcerated students. We run at a prison in San Diego called Donovan, and I'm going to turn it over to one of our esteemed guests, Superintendent Shannon Swain, to introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Shannon Swain. I'm the superintendent for correctional education for the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. We have academic programs that run the gamut from non-readers all the way to high school diploma GED. We have 20 different career and technical education programs, CTE programs, and of course, our amazing higher education college programs. We have college now in every prison, and 11 prisons now have a bachelor's degree pathway and 1 master's pathway. So the work is the privilege of my lifetime, and I'm very glad to be here. Thank you.
Peace, everybody. My name is Gabriel Rosales. I'm a formerly incarcerated arts and corrections provider at Donovan State Prison. I've been there for 6 years teaching, and basically kind of prepared some of the guys inside for the BA program that was going to be starting there, because we started talking about it in 2019. Then COVID hit and everything got pushed back. So I've been involved with Lifted in certain circumstances. A lot of my students actually in my arts and corrections, a lot of it has to do with creative writing. So guys kind of discover that they're, get into literacy, writing themselves, and they discover that they want to take it farther, and they get involved with school from that. Also, I have a lot of students that are currently students at UCI as well as Southwestern Community College. But I always let schoolwork go first before writing songs for the most part. And then I'm also a 5th-year PhD student at UC Irvine myself. So my research has a lot to do with non-designated programming facilities and housing policies in California. And so I also work at Donovan doing, just helping with the initiatives for the incarcerated folks there. If they have ideas, I try to make them come to life. It's a pleasure to be here with everybody.
Hi, everyone. I'm Emma Hughes from Fresno State. I'm a professor in the Criminology department. I started researching education programs in prisons and working in that area about 25 years ago in England. And really the highlight of my professional career has been able to serve as coordinator for our bachelor's degree program that Fresno State runs in 2 prisons in Central California, in a men's prison, Valley State Prison, where we'll see our guest will be speaking from in a minute, and Central California Women's Facility. And I also serve as Fresno State's executive director for our Project Rebound program, support program for formerly incarcerated students, as you just heard about.
She doesn't sleep. And Henry, if you could introduce yourself, please.
Hello, everybody. My name is Henry Inocencio. I'm 45 years old. I've been incarcerated for 22 years. I was a former life without parole inmate, and I just recently got resentenced to life with parole. I'm at Valley State Prison for the PA program that I'm going to graduate December of 2024.
That's amazing.
Thank you, Henry, and congratulations. And Martin?
I'm Martin Castillo. Nice to meet everybody. I'm a graduate of Merced College and a student of Fresno State, scheduled to graduate in 2025. Here at VSP, I work in the Peer Literacy Mentor Program, and most of those students, a lot of those students that Dr. Swain talked about, I see them as they come through for tutoring, as they work on their GEDs and high school diplomas, et cetera. So yeah, pleased to meet everyone. Thank you.
So we together have about 7 or 8 questions that we thought we all pose to the panelists and kind of get a conversation going, but then we hope to save at least 20 minutes at the end for folks to ask us questions. So keep those in mind, and we really look forward to having a conversation here. I'm going to start with just the question that motivated this panel, which is, why does higher education in prison matter? And if we could have our 2 students at Valley State answer first, if you're comfortable with that, we'd love for you to kick us off.
Want me to go first? All right. The way I see it, this is Henry speaking. You're in prison, you're going to get an education, whether it's good or bad. And so a good, healthy, higher education in prison is vital for unlocking human potential. And along that journey, it also re-dignifies the person, and it helps people understand society. You get to learn about yourself as far as, what were some of the reasons why you got involved in crime, and what was the damage and impact you had on society. And that education very important, because not only does it enrich us as people, but it makes communities safer, because our transformed minds, we help transform other people's minds. We help spread the education, and it changes the conversation on the yard, in the room, on the phone. It's very empowering, and education has definitely been a cornerstone of my recovery and rehabilitation.
Thank you, Henry. Martin?
I think that prison is an opportunity for people to grab hold of second chances. For a lot of the young men that I see where I work as a peer literacy mentor, they decided, okay, I've got to get my GED. This is an opportunity for me to do it under a controlled environment. I may not have planned it this way, but this is a chance, and I'm going to grab it. Similarly, for my given the opportunity to attend Merced first and then now Fresno State, I can see education as an opportunity to do something I wasn't able to do on the streets. Okay, I may have always cared about education, but I wasn't always a good student. A lot of these guys see that. They see the opportunity to, you know what, let's go out and get something that we didn't get a chance to do before. It's about second chances, and I think that's where a big role that education plays.
Yes, I agree.
Oh, I promise I'm not going to cry. 10 years ago, when I was appointed by then Governor Brown as deputy superintendent, there was one in-person college program in the state, and that was the Prison University Project. It's now Mount Tamalpais College. It is completely operated by volunteers and a director, and all of the students in the entire college are incarcerated. At the same time that I was appointed, there was some legislation that I had a little bit of a chance to participate in. I think the one word I added was and that was Senate Bill 1391. And Senate Bill 1391 allowed, for the first time since the 80s, for community colleges to serve outside their local district. So it allowed folks to attend at a prison near them where they were incarcerated, and for those colleges that were interested to bring in faculty. Now, 10 years later, I believe we're experiencing what I call a rehabilitative revolution in California prisons. Unfortunately, it's not advertised very well, but there is some amazing stuff happening behind bars. 2 weeks ago, a group of incarcerated softball players got on a bus and were driven to San Quentin, where they played the incarcerated softball players from San Quentin. 10 years ago, that would never have happened. There is a radically different model called the California model that's being built in California. It focuses on 4 pillars, if you will. Normalization, normative experiences for the incarcerated folks, so that they can participate in activities, art, music, bands, which I have the good fortune to be involved with in education. Peer support, and I heard, did you say, Martin, you're a peer literacy mentor?
Yes, I am.
Woohoo! Fantastic program that supports those students who have not been able to enroll in school because of the long wait lists, and our peer literacy mentors support those students. Also, becoming a trauma-informed organization. As I'm sure all of you know, trauma is at the heart of many of the experiences that our incarcerated folks and released folks experienced in their lives. And the last one is what we call dynamic security. This may be the most challenging of the pillars because it ushers in an entire new mindset for the correctional officers who, for the last 40 years, have had that law enforcement discipline kind of approach. So dynamic security asks them to rethink the way they interact with the folks that are incarcerated, to do things like play checkers or volleyball or sing in the band. So higher education, to my thinking, is a no-brainer. Every piece of research in the country points to the lowered recidivism rate. It requires legislators and politicians to think long-term beyond their brief time in the legislature. And that's counter to what many of them look for, which are really quick wins. But we know that when you look long-term, the increased public safety, the multi-generational impact on families, the security and safety of everyone inside the prisons is increased dramatically with college education. And the last thing I want to say is that there's been a technology revolution as well. So while we know that the laptops often don't work, and we know that we don't yet have enough wireless connectivity in our institutions, the mere fact that our incarcerated students are able to get on a laptop and submit a paper electronically rather than writing it with a golf pencil is so huge, and it has really helped change the culture to one more accepting of things like participating in a conference from the prison. So I could go on all day. I'll be quiet. I'll give it to my colleague.
Right on.
I get excited about this stuff.
Yeah, no, I feel you. Same here. For me, education, it's a transformative healing process. Higher education has helped me stay sober. That was part of my issues was, being able to occupy my mind with something that was positive. And so aside from just being a shift in your identity, and one of the things that I've noticed most from teaching inside, being involved with higher education, my own educational experience, and also with the guys that I work with generally, is that, and I mean this, is that education is mental freedom. Like there's so many people I know out here working or walking around the free world that don't have the freedom mentally that the guys that I know inside do. And it's because they've been working on themselves for 20, 30 years, obviously, but at the same time, like they've reached levels of understanding self-awareness and self-control that I wish many people out here had. And so to me, that's huge because you can't take education away from you. That means you can't be shackled mentally by anything for the guys inside. And it's also, as we see, especially with our lifted cohorts, it's also an opportunity to come home. You prove yourself in a certain manner, right? You can get your sentence commuted and then go in front of the board, and the only way you're going to pull that off is by having the insight right and being able to understand certain things and the dynamics and and being able to explain, coherently what's going on in your mind, and also look at society at large. Because really, education kind of expands your world, right? So if you're living in this little silo and this is all you know, when you get educated, you have way more opportunities. You see there's other paths, other options to take, and then that opens the whole world up to you. So I can't speak enough about how positive it is and how life-changing it is. And then, we see with our graduates as well that, it trickles out into the community. Like some of our graduates from the Lifted program, they're the first ones to get a bachelor's degree in their entire family line, and that was really upsetting. But at the same time, like it was thought-provoking, and it was he was setting the precedent from inside prison for the rest of his family. The youth that are coming up beneath him, and so I don't know how else you can affect society other than being able to do that kind of
Yeah, that's huge.
Peace. Yeah.
Amazing.
I'll pass it off.
Thank you. Well, it's just so interesting to hear my fellow panelists' contributions. And just to add to that, I would say, I really think the education programs can make a difference in changing the culture within the prisons as well. Individuals' lives are changing, and through that, they're changing the culture of the prison, and it's also creating an environment which is more conducive to positive and constructive endeavor. And the students serve as role models to others. And as you've heard, Martin is a peer mentor. Henry also serves as a mentor to youth at Valley State Prison. So they're making a huge difference within that facility. As Gabe just mentioned, the impact on families. We've had so many of our students say that others in their families are now going to pursue college because of their experience. And it's also impacting the college campuses as well in really positive ways. As faculty, we learn so much from our students. We learn so much from being involved in this program. And it also allows colleges, universities to be more engaged in outreach with the community, particularly with groups that are underrepresented in higher education. And so the learning really goes both ways. And I could go on forever about the benefits of education in prisons, but I will leave that for now.
No, that's wonderful, and it's wonderful to hear from so many people who've been working so hard in this space for so long. And I think I would add that to highlight the institutional effects, I think, and I'm sure you've seen this too, Emma, all of our faculty who've taught in Lifted have asked to come back. We just interviewed most of them this summer, and every single one, and it's been more than 20 now, said it was the best teaching experience they'd ever had. So I think it's important to think about all of the collateral consequences, right, of this work, that it is about impacting individual lives, and it's also about the institutional shifts that happen when we have dozens of faculty across our public university campuses who are thinking about educating a whole different group of students and having better educational experiences themselves and bringing them back into their classrooms on campus. And same with the family effects that everyone highlighted, right? That was one of the things that surprised me the most about our first cohort of students, were the number of them who told me they had immediate family members who went back to college because they were so inspired by this incarcerated family member at a Cal State or at the University of California. So those are, a lot of good work happening. And Shannon, per usual, was one step ahead of us and answered our question about the California model, which I think is really important. And I want to pick up on that with all of us and ask a question, since so many folks here have been involved in this space over the last 5-10 years, especially in California, and ask, how do you think things have changed over time, particularly in the last decade, in relation to prison education? And does it feel like there's a mood for change? And particularly now, I mean, this question has maybe changed in the last few days. Like, do we feel like we can keep the momentum going? And I open it up to whoever feels most excited to jump on that one.
Well, I'll start with one significant shift that I've seen, which is the appointment and what's it called? When they go before the Senate committee, the wardens. There is a new generation of wardens. And as we have progressed and done more and more with education inside, with programs inside, dog programs, art programs, you name it, more and more, the folks that are coming up into leadership roles embrace the fact that all these different programs increase security of staff and residents inside the institutions. And so that kind of hook 'em and book 'em culture that's associated often with law enforcement seems to be changing, slowly but surely.
I could throw something in. So legislation in California has been huge in kind of spurring some of these things as well, right? Like the hunger strikes. Got to bring that up, of course, and that, people, incarcerated people making movements and making the actual state change for them for the better conditions-ish, you know what I mean? And being able to create these communication pathways, really, to start changing things. Prop 47, Prop 57, specifically 57, obviously, with the milestone credits, but I feel like in the past, at least since I started in like 2017, 2018, teaching in prison and working, is that we're starting to kind of see the fruits of like Prop 57. Obviously, it's legislation doesn't change everything overnight, so things are slow to change. And it's like moving a huge semi or a ocean liner and try to change direction immediately, and it takes a little bit of time. But generally, I think the idea too is that rather than looking at education as just something for people to do while they're incarcerated, it's now looked at as more of a self-empowerment tool, and it's being encouraged more like that, as opposed to just being like, yeah, let's just give these guys something to do. And that has to do a lot, if not all, I think, by the in-person teaching. Because, we've always had coastline and stuff like that, right, where people could send in packets. During COVID, I was sending in packets to my students, but face-to-face is everything. Like, being able to communicate with a teacher in real time is everything. And so that was really important. I think that, and like as Kermit was mentioning, changing the culture of teaching, because part of, I talk to a lot of different, groups when I'm on different yards at Donovan specifically, and one of the biggest things that, takeaways and important things that they get out of it from the education is having a professor, somebody that never maybe would have thought of coming in and humanizing everybody inside, and then going out hopefully and telling everybody else, hey, my class is amazing, these guys are great. And then they start advocating for them, right? And then we start advocating, and that's how, things change and hopefully can be undone. Some things can. But that's, to me, that's like one of the biggest things is having in person. And that's what changed like drastically, I think, in the past, 5 to 6 years.
Mm-hmm. I'd like to see if Henry or Martin want to say anything next.
Yes, on last decade, this is Henry speaking. I was in Kern Valley State Prison, and like the feel on the yard was, one of hopelessness, and a lot of people they turn to gangs or drugs, some way to escape that feeling. And I remember when Bakersfield Community College first came, I think it was around 2015.
It's our first.
And it was like a doorway opened, and it represented hope. It was like I told Emma that it's like education carved a keyhole into the carceral complex and radiated hope onto the yard. And that hope represented another pathway, something different than what people have been doing, whether it was violence, drugs, gangs, or anything else. Especially, I was on a level 4 180 yard. And what that hope does is it not only self-empowerment, but it makes you feel more confident about your ability, self-efficacy, and then now you have multiple pathways to get to goals. You have an opportunity to redefine yourself, to become someone other than what you thought you were, and to reconnect to maybe who you're always supposed to be. And so where we're at today, I could have never envisioned, being in the California Model Reentry Building, talking with staff from Norway, talking about the California model, talking about education, talking with training staff that trains cadets. And they're asking me my perspective on the California model. And we're talking about Corrections 101. Sitting in class on Zoom with a Supreme Court justice from Argentina, having a conversation about rehabilitation. Those things were unthought of 10 years ago. And that shows you in a short amount of time, because 10 years is not that long, that we've come a long way. And it feels good to be in this place. And I think that we need to, just expand on the positives.
So powerful.
Martin, do you have anything to add? No pressure.
Well, as Dr. Hughes pointed out, she talked about a culture change, the possibility that education has for that. And as Mr. Robles has mentioned as well, every time you look at a student in education, you're looking at one person that is part of an entire movement, if you will, towards change. I'm going to use this as an example. 10 years ago, it would have been difficult for us to even maybe get to some of these programs for education, okay? We didn't have to buy in from the people in green, if you will, to get us out of our pods or through these doors, through the pod door, through the front door, through the work change, back into education. That was an issue, okay? We don't see that. The program has grown so much that at any day you could see almost 300 guys in education, all programming, all pursuing some sort of educational goal. The CEOs have bought into that, and they should be commended because they are demonstrating that California model that we discussed. They're demonstrating buy-in into the programs that you guys have put to the ground. So I think they play a big role, and staff and themselves should be commended for that. I do think that is sustainable because they see programmers coming through their work change. They see programmers going to school in the afternoon, and apparently they're saying, hey, this is what we wanted to see.
Excellent.
Well, I'll just add that when I came back to California from England in 2007, I could never have imagined being in the situation that we're in now. And it was in 2019 when I received a phone call from Dr. Brandt Schout, who at that point was the director of rehabilitative programming, saying, would Fresno State like to offer a bachelor's degree program in VSP in Central California Women's Facility? And when I tell the story, I always say I almost fell off my chair. I couldn't believe that this phone call was happening. And it really just speaks to how much had changed since Brown v. Platter in 2011, helping to reduce the overcrowding in the prisons. Before that, there was no room for these programs to be taking place. And just to see how much has changed in that time. And something that Shannon said reminded me of the fact that, at times we'll complain, oh, the storage on the laptops is not big enough, or the Wi-Fi's gone down. And then I just have to stop and remind myself and say, we're talking about laptops in prisons and Wi-Fi that before was unimaginable, and we need to keep moving forwards, and we need to make the systems better, but also taking a moment to recognize how far we have come and what it has made possible.
Amazing.
That's amazing.
So I think one of the really exciting things that has happened in California is that we have the entire public university system involved in higher education in prisons in the state. And I think you're getting a sense of that from the things people are saying on this panel, as opposed to what we have in a lot of other states are wonderful programs, but often really small liberal arts programs that are educating a few dozen people a year at best. And what California has, we told you, we have more than 10,000 people in college programs.
Almost 15.
Yes, almost 15.
15,000.
It's growing, and hundreds in four-year degree programs. And so I think one of the really interesting things we on this panel are in a particularly good position to talk about is that relationship between a public university system and a state prison system and the way that's evolved. And I think it's evolved differently for all of the stakeholders in this space. And so I'd like to toss it out there, perhaps with Emma starting, but I'm also really curious what our students think about that and Shannon's perspective. So, yeah.
Well, I'll start by saying one of the things that's really important to our program, and I know all the other programs in California, is building a strong connection between the campus, the prison campus, and the university campus. So it doesn't feel like there's othering, it doesn't feel like it's us versus them. Everyone is, in our case, a Fresno State student. And we have students from the university campus that go to the prison campus and take part in debate programs and things like that. It's part of normalizing, which, as Shannon mentioned, is part of the new California model. Also, it's really important to us to build strong connections between our Project Rebound programs. Project Rebound is in the CSU system, Underground Scholars is in the UC system, and the community colleges have Rising Scholars. So we have this strong network of communities supporting formerly incarcerated students. So when we have students who parole before they earn their degree, we work to connect them to the Project Rebound program or Underground Scholars program at the campus that's near where they're paroling to. And so, for instance, in the front row today, we have two students who started in our program at Fresno State at VSP and CCWF. One, Kevin, they said I can introduce them. Kevin McHenry is now earning his bachelor's degree through San Francisco State and is sitting next to... and is sitting next to Jason Bell from San Francisco State. And in front of me down here, we have Catherine Spiak, who finished her classes at San Francisco State, transferred them back to Fresno State, graduated through Fresno State, and is now in the MPA program at San Francisco State. And we have students at Cal State LA, we have students, one just graduated from UCLA, we have others at Sacramento State. So it's really building these connections. One of our students, he paroled, the next day he arrives in Fresno, the first thing he does is go to the Project Rebound office on campus, gets some snacks, gets a tour of the campus, and then someone takes into his classroom for the first day of the semester. And so it's building those seamless connections where students who are paroling feel that they have a place where they belong, they have a home, they have a community, somewhere where they will not feel judged and they can continue their educational program. And then we also have a program that's funded through CDCR, through their innovative program grants, where we have Project Rebound students going into the prisons doing outreach and encouraging educational uptake. And now Fresno State students at VSP and CCWF serve as ambassadors within the program, facilitating that program. So it's about kind of changing the cultures, both from inside and outside.
Well, I would say that, before Dr. Choate and I started, we were both appointed at the same time, and we sat down and had this grand plan for education in California. We were going to have internet connectivity, and we were going to do this and that, and have college degrees, and then we started and actually learned, no, you can't do that, you can't do that, you can't do that. So we regrouped, and we started this campaign to become the best correctional education program in the world. And one of the things that we quickly learned is that you can plan all you want, but it's all about relationships. It's, when Pell, the rules for Pell got changed back so that incarcerated folks are eligible for Pell grants, I was getting 4 or 5 calls a week from really excited faculty that really wanted to do something and really passionate about, let's do college and prison. We used to joke that they would lay in bed at night and say, hey, I got an idea, we can increase our attendance. And what we learned really quickly is that nothing happens until the president and the provost care and want to do it. Nothing. So we started talking to provosts and presidents and people like Val, and sitting on the patio at Carol Seaton's house and saying, yeah, we could probably do that. Let's do that. So sometimes the big grand plan doesn't happen as quickly as that one little thing that you start. And you get started, and then it becomes this groundswell. And there is no way they could take away college and prison now in California. We've codified it, it's in law. We have memoranda of understanding. We have all of these programs, and they have been so successful that in changing the culture of the prisons, reducing violence on the yard, increasing, again, that multi-generational impact, that we're not going anywhere. They're not going anywhere. They're going to be here forever, hopefully. That's the dream. That's the hope.
And one of the things that I think has been really cool in California, I often say this about reform generally, you have to think about litigation and legislation and advocacy, and I think the higher ed and prison movement in the state has really exemplified that, right? We've had laws that make it possible for the community colleges to go in. We've had agreements with the UCs, with the Cal States, and these programs are all funded in different ways, right? Yep. Some legislative allocations, some contracts with the state prison system, some agreements to just make credits more valuable for certain institutions to offer inside prison. So lots of creative modalities to make this come together. And then I think the other piece that's really exciting in the state is everyone working together. So as someone who's been in the UC system as a graduate student and a faculty member for almost 2 decades, it's really amazing to sit in a monthly call with the community college providers, the Cal State providers, the BA providers, and the state prison system, really strategizing about how we can all make coordinated policies that get our students to degree in an efficient manner. And that's not something that happens, right? It is really fun to feel like we're all on the same team instead of kind of competing with different goals. And my hope is that in the same way we're talking about, that will trickle out and have ripple effects institutionally in the state, right? To the extent we do a really good job of getting college students from community college to Cal State to UC within prison, maybe we can do a better job out of prison. So I think it's, there are cool things happening that might have good consequences. But we've heard from all the administrative wonks, but we haven't heard what it's like for the students on the ground experiencing this. And I'd really love to know what Henry and Martin, how you see these relationships, from the inside.
Want me to go?
Uncle?
Where?
Well, Dr. Hughes mentioned debate. Debate was one of the first exposures we had to Fresno State's coming in from the outside and interacting with them. I can speak about the first debate that we had. I think it was last December. And it was a great opportunity for us to go out and it was very humanizing. That was one of the terms that we all came away with. It was very humanizing and very normal. These were just regular people. For those of us who've done a lot of time, I mean, it was really different for us to meet people from the streets and just shake their hands and speak with them and have normal conversations. It was, first of all, a great thing. We appreciated that. But it also gave us a sense of, gosh, we might actually be for us. It's really giving us a renewed sense of belonging, and that's amazing. It gives us something to aspire to, gives us something to be grateful for, and just on debate alone, it's something that we're all going to remember for a good long time.
Just touching on what Martin said, that belonging is it's a reconnection, being reconnected to the community. Dr. Hughes said, partnerships, having that partnership with, Fresno State gives a sense of community. And it's very important, especially when you're re-entering society, your support system is very important. And to have a strong network of people that understand you and are willing to embrace you and accept you back into the community is vital for, safe reintegration for multiple decades. And the partnership and relationship, what it looked like was recently we just had a graduation ceremony for Fresno State for the first cohort that graduated with a BA in social science. And my wife was able to attend. And my wife got to meet the president, Saul Jimenez, Sandoval, I believe his name was. Yes, the president of Fresno State. And he treated us the same way he would treat any of his students on campus, with the same dignity, the same joy, and it felt good. Warden Bailey was there, the warden was there. You had all the faculty was there. Even Victory, the dog mascot for Fresno State was there. And we got to take pictures. It was definitely humanizing, re-dignifying, and reconnecting to community, which is very important. Because a lot of times we can feel that because we may feel that we define ourselves by our worst mistakes, and we keep ourselves in that hole, in that circle, in that little box. And to understand that we are more than that, that we can make amends for what we've done, and that we can just give back and help heal the communities that we once were a part of damaging. It's very important.
Before I move, Gabe, do you have anything you're, I don't want to, so we've said a lot of really wonderful things about how amazing all of this is, but I also think it's important to talk more about the challenges, and so I want to get, so many, and I want to give everybody an opportunity, and actually, I'd love to hear from Henry and Martin to kind of kick us off about, from your side, what are some of the challenges you've experienced in starting college from within prison?
Oh my gosh. For me, at the beginning, having a life without parole sentence, I wasn't allowed to attend the Bakersfield Community College in Kern Valley at first because they were catering to those that were closer to being released, which I understand. However, that did change, and I was able to, go to Columbia College, Community College in Sierra Conservation Center, Jamestown, and then I got 2 degrees there. Got a math degree, social science degree, transferred to VSP, was able to participate in the BA program. And so the biggest obstacle that I've had since I've been here has been the work conflict. And really that's it, because my job hours are the same hours of my school hours. And so being able to modify those hours have been like the obstacle. As far as everything else, it's just been a blessing, having laptops, Wi-Fi, EBSCO, having staff that treat you with a professionalism, like CO Holly, Maldonado, Samaco, all these COs, they see that we're doing the right thing and that we're changing, so they treat us with respect. So right now, there's really not too many obstacles that I can think of that really pertain to me other than the work conflict.
I could probably piggyback off of that one pretty similar, say the same thing. As a matter of fact, Dr. Hughes and has worked out a program for us. It's almost seamless. I mean, it is really seamless. She works very closely with her staff to make sure that we have everything we need to keep the program going. Of course, we occasionally have technology issues, but even when we do have those technology issues, some of the professors to give us a little more time to get those in, acknowledging where we are and what's going on with that. But as far as challenges, no, it's way different than it was 10 years ago. It's as if this is something that's got buy-in from so many levels before us that they make our job just getting there easy. So that's really a comment that I really feel I need to make right now.
I see you literally biting your tongue.
Well, it was all a challenge. It's all a challenge. And I think it comes down to grit. I think that we've worked at a variety of levels, right? Changing the rules so that I can hire educational leaders who are instructional leaders from the outside as administrators. Before, there was a real culture in prison of hiring from within, which works sometimes, don't get me wrong. But there was a real dearth of knowledge about technology in the classroom, what technology can do, how to use it, how to integrate it into your lessons, et cetera. Believe it or not, one of the biggest challenges that we currently face is space. Many of the prisons, especially our older prisons, Folsom, San Quentin, California, technical facility, training facility, California training facility, CMC, California Men's Colony, they were not built to program. They were built to warehouse individuals in cages, frankly. And so, right now we got lucky. We have a $365 million building, an education building going up at San Quentin. Very excited about that. All the rooms will have technology completely integrated into their design. So sharing space, making sure that folks can access, we had to change the law in order to make sure that people could go to school half-time and work half-time. That was like pulling teeth. So it's a lot of people working together, communicating a lot, and then keeping your eye on that goal of having a normal experience for our incarcerated students. I want them to feel like scholars, and they are.
I'd have to say, in terms of hurdles and things and problems, issues that I've seen. So after COVID, there was a big exodus of COs. A lot of the old guard left, which was helpful in a lot of ways, because like with the new hires, they're being, trained in the California model and stuff like that. But, it still is a prison, and every person has their political leanings. And so you have also still demographics of correctional officers that they're resentful. They're like, why are these people getting a free education? And they're this scarcity mindset. I'm like, why aren't we all getting a free education? Why don't you look at it like that instead? You know what I mean? Instead of picking on these guys. It's crazy. And so that's been one thing I've seen. And really, they're the custodians, right? They're the people that have the keys literally to the doors. And so we have to rely on them to make things run. And then also, obviously, like with the budget cuts, like there's been a lot of staff shortages. It hasn't really affected education as much as far as I know. Like they've still been able to run classes and stuff, but it is still a hindrance because if something happens on another yard, then all the security staff needs to go to that yard and everything's shut down on the other yard. So then it's just this kind of, wavering programming, and then people get behind in school. It's just, it's one of those things. And that's, one of those things you can't control everything, and it's tough to do that. So I understand like the hurdles and the issues that come with that, but it is, it's just a culture thing, but one of the things I would say about the culture shift with the correctional officers, it was really crazy to see it within I noticed it in a couple months even, where, because there was a point right after COVID, right, 2021, I saw one of my students, little anecdote, that was on a previous yard. He was an older gentleman, and he made it to this other yard that was a lower security level, and I was happy to see him. I gave him a big hug because I was happy he was still alive, right? And then actually not a CO, but a counselor came up to me, and she's like, that was totally inappropriate. You're not allowed to, touch this person like that. I'm like, I'm sorry. I'm just excited that he's still alive. And I was trying to not be very, bitter about it, but I was pretty angry because she pulled me out of the class that I was teaching as well. So I saw the culture shift from that to now I can hug dudes on the yard. I see COs fist bumping, shaking hands, being friendly, having some kind of camaraderie with the population as well. And it's still kind of weird, even though obviously my students and incarcerated population are kind of hesitant, yeah, you're calling us residents, but what does that really mean? Because you're still treating us like this in certain situations. But generally, a lot of that stuff is the hurdles and things are it's going to take time. And as Ms. Swain was saying, there's just not much space. It's so hard to find space. Everybody's fighting over space. So you have people trying to get their GED, people trying to get their AAs, and people going to Cal States and UCs possibly. So it's and there's no classroom space. And
Kitchens and bathrooms and closets.
Yes, it's just nothing. So it gets pretty tough to do that. But as far as we'll get to the solutions later. So.
Yeah.
I'll just say quickly that things do take longer to set up and organize within the prison. So if you're used to, it can take a long time on campus as well, but longer in the prison. And we work very closely with the education staff in the prisons, but we end up having to ask a lot of them, and they have to operate within the constraints of the environment in which they work. And I want to acknowledge Vice Principal Greg Adams, who's facilitating this Zoom call today. It took a lot of time to set up this Zoom call, and Vice Principal Adams has to be taking time away from what he would otherwise be doing to facilitate this. So it can be done. It just takes a lot of preparation in advance, and having professors who are so excited to teach in the program makes all the difference, because they're willing to work with the lockdowns that happen or different things that come up and make it happen.
I think I would summarize a lot of the challenges fall into the category of staying true to institutional values and also figuring out when those values need to shift, right? And I think we're hearing some of what has made this work is correctional values shifting around normalization and valuing humanity, being able to give a student a hug. And I think some of what's shifting is educational norms also around investing in these spaces and inclusivity and figuring out how to make the policies work. But some of the biggest challenges really come in those places of friction, right? Yep. What a student in a public university requires in terms of a disability accommodation is different from what a student in a state prison system requires, and we have to work together to figure out how to each meet our legal obligations. But I think that's where some of the most powerful work also happens, when we meet and we figure out how to do that, and the institutions shift together. So I think even in the challenges, there's exciting work happening. So I'm conscious of time, and I want to make sure that we're able to involve the audience, but I do want to ask the panelists one more question, because we are at the American Society of Criminology meetings, and most of us are academics who study this stuff and really like numbers and program evaluation. And I want to ask everyone, and we'll go to our students last, but I want to ask the panelists to think about how do you think success in this space should be measured? How do we say we have a successful prison education program? I suspect we'll get different answers, but this is something all of us think about. So,
well, I'll tell you what it isn't. It is not butts in seats, which unfortunately is what I'm most frequently judged, if you will, on. It's really difficult to measure behavioral change. And so we have to get creative and look at things like violence on the yard, incidents of rules violations, And unfortunately, it almost always falls into this area of looking at something negative as opposed to looking at something positive. So this is one of the things that I've not been able to solve, and I will give you all my email, and if you figure it out, please let me know, because it is so critically important. To be fair, we are currently doing an evaluation with the Public Policy Institute of California. We've worked with UCI for a long time on evaluating successful programs. We're looking at our CTE programs, all of which lead to an industry-recognized certification. There's no more hobby shops in prison anywhere. So, I'll be quiet now.
I'm kind of holistic-minded always, you know, I'm a qualitative guy. I'm considering self-reflection, because I'm also an arts provider too. So I think self-reflection and connection to like the inside prison community, because they can't always, people can't always have connections at the outside, and that self-reflection and community component is huge. But also in terms of like writing and stuff, I noticed that in my classes where people are able to freely write, a lot of times people write, especially incarcerated students, they write to the program provider, they write to the educator, because they want to try to please them and make them hear what they think they want to hear. And I want to hear honesty. Like, it's okay to be critical of the system. And so I try to create a space where people take responsibility, take accountability, but at the same time, you're able to question these systems and institutions that people, that we're placed in. And that's, to me, is like a huge space, and a freeing, and it's a liberation that you not necessarily can get everywhere. So I think, it's connection to yourself, connection to the community, but then also being able to be critical of the systems that you're in. That's kind of how I'm looking at it.
Well, obviously, people want to know about recidivism rates, and universities want to know about graduation rates, as does CDCR. But looking more broadly beyond that, and as a qualitative researcher, I'm much more interested in the students' experience. What have they gained or not from this program? What worked for them? What didn't work? So that we can make the programs better. And also so we can see the outcomes in a more holistic way. How is it impacting reentry? How are they getting on with finding jobs, building community, creating a sense of belonging post-release? And for those who are not going to be released or might not be released for a long time, though increasingly our LWOP students, like you just heard Henry, he's going in front of the parole board next year. And so students are getting out. But for those who are not, or still have a long time left to serve, what are they able to do to gain a sense of purpose within the prison, to build the community there, feel that they're able to become their best selves within that environment, whatever is working for them? So those are the things I think we really need to focus on, so we're not just boiling it down to, did someone reoffend, and if they did, well, why? And what could we have done to help support that maybe would have led to a different outcome?
That's a great point, Emma. I'll say that I've received so much pressure, you just wouldn't even believe, to change the current policy, which is we take everyone in the college program, whether they're getting out in 6 months or whether they're getting out in 50 years. And I have received pressure from legislators to serve the folks that are getting out first. But that doesn't take into account the fact that so many sentences have been commuted, so many folks have gotten out who were LWOPs, lifers without possibility of parole. And it doesn't take into account the cultural change that you talked about, that shift on the yard. I think it was one of our students.
Was it Henry?
I think it was Henry. You talked about Kern Valley, right?
Yeah.
Were you on B?
I was on C.
You were on C. So the change on that yard, the impact to the entire culture of the institution has changed. So I'm holding firm. We're not gonna let them win on this one. Every student can learn. Every student can grow. I really take a grade school to grad school approach, and so just something to think about.
And I really want to hear from Henry and Martin in particular, because I think one of the greatest potentials of this space is to have the students be deciding what matters for success, right? And so I would love to hear what you think and what you would measure. And yeah, and it's something, I think it's something we're all thinking about. How do we involve our students more in thinking about this?
I'll start. If you speak about Fresno State, then of course you're going to look at the recent graduation as a clear indicator of success. But I've got an anecdote from this past Friday. I was in a meeting inside my workspace with Dr. Hughes and Vice President Adams. We were there and we were talking about this upcoming meeting. And seated at my desk, who was there for his weekly meeting with me, is basically his tutoring session, was a student. I'll mention his name, Freeman, because I'm sure he won't mind. He had been in the program, Peer Literacy Mentor Program, since we came out of COVID in 2021. Okay, and he started without any section of his GED. So under our program, he got all 4 of his sections passed. And on this past Friday, he is in there currently working as an undergrad student with Merced. Mm-hmm. So to me, that is what success looks like. Taking a guy who came in with no part of the GED and getting him on that journey. And there he was, sitting right there as I was standing there talking to Dr. Hughes and Mr. Adams. He was there to work on college. So that's success to me, measuring the guys who get on that journey along that continuum and get to the end at some point. That's my idea of what success is in education.
Just like Martin here, I can speak on numerous successes. For me, being able to redefine who I am, enriching my character, essentially become a resource of education. And I had the opportunity to work with the youth diversion program at this program and at Jamestown. So what I was able to do is, from what I learned in college, I was able to synthesize all the information I learned from sociology, criminology, public speaking, and counseling courses, and I created a training manual and trained other mentors. So I used the education that I learned, and I was able to immediately, infuse that learning, integrate it into what we were doing. And so we became, a resource for the community. We were working with at-risk youth in the local areas, local communities, whether it's Madera, Fresno, or in the Sacramento area, all around. And so we had kids coming in there, and based on the knowledge that we learned, where help empower them, help them to self-motivation, helping them to see different paths in themselves, seeing themselves in different ways, learning about identity and role confusion, helping them through that process. And so education, those are successes that can't be measured unless like the warden comes in and sits in on what we're doing, or that we have actual dialogue with staff, updating them on what we're actually at work with. So I can go on all day. There's multiple examples. And obviously recidivism is the main thing that people pay attention to, but there's a lot going on. There's people reaching out into the communities and currently and actively working with the community to enrich our communities from in prison.
So you've been a wonderful audience. We have many members of the audience who have been deeply involved in this work, as deeply as any of us up here. So I'd like to make sure we have a chance for at least a few questions. And there's a microphone set up in the middle there, which if you come up to that, that will allow our students on Zoom to hear your question also. I can repeat it too, but I'm guessing I'm hoping there's a few burning questions in the audience for any of us. Yeah, please, come on up.
Calvin, what up, bro?
Hi, everybody. My name's Calvin Smiley. I just have a question. It's a question. It's more like just looking for the gentlemen, especially who are on Zoom. Appreciate your time. We started a in-college program for youth in New York City, where I'm at, right, where we're offering college courses to the young guys. It's a little bit different, right, because they're mostly pretrial detention. They are youth. So I was just wondering if the men on the Zoom, just have any words of advice, encouragement that I could maybe hopefully film and bring it back to them, because I am allowed to bring a USB into the facility, and I'm able to work with them with technology. So
Awesome.
if you don't want to do it, you don't have to, but it's just a question, maybe if you, I'll stop.
Love it. Thank you, Calvin. Henry and Martin, could you hear?
Yes.
Great.
And for the young men in New York, just understand this, that it's never too late to do the right thing, right? You are 10 times greater than you ever thought you were, and you have everything it's to capture the dreams you create. Oh, yeah, Mom.
Let me just say what Henry said twice. So I'll go ahead and repeat it, okay? And secondly, fellas, before you go off to prison or wherever you're going to go, your pretrial or whatever's going on, whatever you're doing in there matters for when you land wherever you're going to land. So do the very best you can, especially on the educational front, so that when you land wherever you land, you've already got your foot running, okay? It's going to help you out. Don't blow it off while you're there. Do the best you can.
Wow.
Thank you.
You're here.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Wonderful question. Thank you.
I'm Steve. I'm from a state that has had correctional education programs for several decades at lower and higher levels. And let me give you, while I support the programs and have done research to help support it, let me ask the question that has always been the biggest fly in the ointment. How do you justify spending money on inmate education when you don't spend that same amount of money on staff education?
So I think that's a great question, and it completely ties in with the numerous times I've had correctional officers ask me that exact same thing. And I would say, again, that we're playing the long game. The reduction in cost, it costs $128,000 to keep somebody incarcerated in California prison for a year. And it costs, depending on UC or California State University, roughly $10,000 a year, a little more, probably a little more. And if you look long term, the recidivism reduction, the increased employment and paying of taxes, there's no question. And so it's about looking to the future, looking at what's been researched, looking at RAND study, looking at the meta-evaluations that have been done on correctional education. It's been interesting in my career. This is my 40th year doing this kind of work. And the Correctional Education Association, it's a international organization. It really, until about 3 years ago, didn't even consider higher education. It was CTE and ABE, adult basic education, GED kind of stuff. And the shift to seeing the benefit, the long-term financial benefit to any governmental agency and society, that's where you have to focus. You have to focus on that long-term gain rather than that short-term.
I would add, in California, we're leveraging state and federal tuition credit to ensure that in a state that has banned the box, so we do not ask anyone applying to public universities about their criminal conviction, we are just leveraging existing aid policies that anyone should have access to. And I didn't know about how robust those policies were in this state until I started doing this work. And so I often have this conversation with correctional officers and say, you or your kids might be eligible for this. I would add also, in a dream world, we do have more programs for correctional officers who are interested.
In college.
And I think, as Gabe said so beautifully before, the question isn't why do these people have this, it's why do you not have this, and how can we make sure that everyone who wants to access a college education can?
Yeah, we've really been collaborating with the Community College Chancellor's Office to make correctional officers able to take classes.
Yeah.
So, a lot of avenues.
Thank you.
Just to add to that too, just because I work with a lot of guys doing programs and trying to make stuff happen, one of the things I want to make happen is actually have the incarcerated folks be able to teach the correctional staff certain things that they know a lot about, which I think could bridge a lot of gaps in general. That's down the road though.
That would be awesome. My name's Rachel. I'm with the School Justice Project in DC. We work with emerging adults to access special education, primarily in pretrial, but also once they go to the BOP, because DC folks, we don't have a prison, so we contract with the Bureau of Prisons. So my question is about if you all or anyone in the room knows about any federal BOP facilities that offer college programs. We've had a really hard time finding opportunities. That's it. That's the question.
To my knowledge, I don't know that there are any BOP programs. California is one of the only states in the nation where our correctional educators are civil service employees. Most states contract with a county office of education or a school district to provide education in their jails and prisons. There are a few exceptions. Texas, Florida, Michigan has a big program, Minnesota has a big program, but you're not alone in that contracting piece, I promise. And if you want to reach out to me, I'm happy to share anything that I know with you, and can connect you with some folks at BOP and find out where and how they're moving ahead.
And I just met the new San Jose State Project Rebound Director yesterday, Emma, and I think you'll be here tomorrow, who started his college programming in federal BOP at least, so could be worth, yeah.
And I was just going to mention FCI Mendota in Central California. They were starting a community college program right before the pandemic hit, but my understanding is they're trying to get that up and running again, FCI Mendota.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. I think we have time for one more question, or maybe, I see there's only two people, maybe we can get both your questions and try to answer on speed.
I'll keep it brief. I just really wanted to say, I am Kevin. I am here with Project Rebound in San Francisco State, also representing Fresno State. I'm a junior right now. I want to say hi to Martin, and I wanted to say hi to hey, you guys. I was there with them 15 months ago. Actually, Martin was my tutor in my math guy. He helped me get through my statistics class so I could get my degree. Anyway, it's good to see you guys, man.
Hey, good to see you, brother.
San Jose State is on board. I applied to San Jose State upon leaving, and they told me they didn't want any parts of what we were doing as far as coming out. Anyway, it was kind of hard. Anyway, my question is this: the grants, the Pell Grant, Cal Grant, EOP Grant, any of the grants, are those available to the incarcerated folks? And will they be getting that? And I know it was being worked on, but that's my question, and I'm done.
Awesome. Can we get the second question too,
please.
just so we come on up and let's put them both on the table, and we'll do our best.
Hi, my name's John Michael. I'm also a rebounder from SDSU. And I know most of you are here. So while I was living in the gated community for about 20 years, I noticed that it was only really level 2s that had access to higher education. I was wondering if there has been access into the level 3s and 4s yet, and if not, what are we doing to grant access to those?
So
awesome. Financial aid and access. Yeah,
access. So I'm happy to answer both of those. So equity is a really key, critical issue for me, and for my department and my agency. So when we were setting up bachelor's degree programs, the original vision was to make sure that we were serving the women and making sure that we were serving every security level, except for the level 1s, believe it or not, because the level 1s aren't in long enough to get a bachelor's degree. They just turn over. So I'm happy to tell you that in September, I guess late August, at Pelican Bay, notorious for being this horribly, the worst of the worst, we have a bachelor's degree program through Cal Poly Humboldt State.
The first Pell eligible, right?
Yeah, that was
the first Pell site in the country.
Yeah, the first Pell, second, well.
And UC Irvine was the second.
Yeah, and UC was the second. So as for Pell, we are really lucky in California that community college is essentially free, and perhaps the best value in the world for higher education. So the first 2 years, so pretty much every incarcerated person, unless we've incarcerated someone who's really, really rich, which doesn't happen that often, pretty much anybody's eligible for community college. And if the college or university that's providing that bachelor's degree goes through the application process and gets all those approvals, which is a total pain in the behind, but they do it. And Pell funding is available to every incarcerated individual. The money doesn't go to the student, though, and that's important to share with people that you're serving. The money goes to the university to serve the student. And so, yes, Pell is available in California. Fresno's in process, right? All of our bachelor's degree programs, save one, which is a really tiny private college that we kind of grandfathered in. All of them are using at least some Pell funding. And I got a measly $5 million from the state budget about 5 years ago. And we cheated a little, and we were supposed to serve 7 institutions, and we're serving 11. But
So this has been amazing. I'm conscious of time and want to wrap up, but hopefully you all can reach out if there's more questions and we can continue the conversation. And Henry and Martin, thank you so much for being here. Thank you.
thank you, Assistant Principal Gaddams.
Yes.
You're welcome.
He's a superhero.
Yeah.
He really is.
And thank you to our audience. And
Yeah.
Have a great conference.
Thank you.
And thank you so much,
Oh,
Shannon,
it's so
for making
fun.
the trip down. Yep.
Oh, yes,
Thanks, everybody.